And we're back to the Python Institute, this time with lab number 4.1.3.10, and we are talking about converting of fuel consumption types. Well, let's read through this and see what they have to say. The objective is to improve the student's skills in defining, using, and testing functions. And the scenario talks about a car's fuel consumption being expressed in many different ways. For example, in Europe, it is shown as the fuel consumed per 100 kilometers. In the USA, it's shown by miles traveled on 1 gallon of fuel. I don't know if that's true about Europe. That sounds kind of interesting if it is. So your task is to write a pair of functions converting liters per 100 kilometers into miles per gallon and vice versa. Let's see. So the functions, there are two functions, liters 100 kilometers to miles per gallon, and miles per gallon to liters per 100 kilometers. Take one value or take one argument. So for instance, liters to 100 miles per gallon, liters per, it comes in liters, and then mpg to liters per 100 kilometers takes in miles. So take one argument, complete the code, and then run the code and make sure the output is correct. There is some helpful information here. For instance, 1 American mile equals 1,609 meters or 1.61 kilometers if you want to round that out. And then 1 American gallon is equal to 3.78 liters. Or vice versa, 3.78 liters is equal to 1 gallon, and 1.61 kilometers is equal to 1 mile. So we can see we've got a skeleton over here. We've got a couple of functions that we need to define or to fill out, and then we've got some sample data along with the expected output. So I will have to admit, when I first started working on this, it took me entirely too long. Probably took me about 2 hours and a whiteboard and a bunch of post-it notes to try to figure out exactly how to calculate all this. I may have been thinking too hard about it. That's just me. I don't know. We'll find out. This first function right here, liters per 100 kilometers to gallons or miles per gallon, was actually fairly simple for me to understand. Basically, what we need to do is two different functions. First off, we need to figure out how many liters there are in a gallon. So how many liters in a gallon, and then how many, so liters, sorry, not figure out, but convert liters to gallons. And we need to convert kilometers, which just happens to be exactly 100 kilometers, into miles. Once that is done, then we simply take miles and we divide it by gallons, and we get our output. So 2 conversions. This first one right here, 100 kilometers to miles, is actually going to be really easy because we have kilometers and miles right there. We just need to essentially flip-flop those numbers so we have kilometers on the left and miles on the right, or the other way around, and then worry about the liters to gallons, or how many gallons there are in those liters. So for instance, we are given right here 3.9 liters. So we know that 3.78 liters is a gallon, so it's going to be just over 1 gallon. Well, let's go ahead and we'll start off here. Let's see, 1.609 meters is 1 gallon. So that means that the miles driven, create a variable here called miles, is going to be equal to, well, 1609.344 meters. So that means we need to divide that. No, excuse me. 1,000 divided by that. That will give me the number of kilometers, and then I need to multiply that. And then I need to multiply that by 100. Excuse me, to be the 100 kilometers. See if that makes sense. This is the number of meters in a mile. We divide that by 1,000 to get the number of kilometers. and then we multiply that by 100 to be 100 kilometers, since this is the 100 kilometer guess. By the way, that number will always come out to exactly the same, so we could actually cheat that out. 100 times 1000 divided by 1609.344, 62.137. We could manually type that in, and that probably wouldn't necessarily hurt to type that in instead of that calculation. I'm going to leave the calculation there for now just because it makes sense. So that converts my 100 kilometers into a static number of miles. Next thing I need to do is I need to convert my liters into gallons. So I'm going to have another variable called gallons, and somehow I need to convert liters into gallons. If 3.785 liters equals 1 gallon, I should just be able to take my liters variable that's being passed into it and divide that by 3.78. So liters divided by 3.785411784. Why we're using such large places on the decimal point, I don't really know, but that's what they told us to do. All right, so at this point, I have figured out how many miles I've traveled. I've figured out how many gallons it's taken me to travel that far. Now I can simply return miles per gallon, which is just simply miles over gallon. So I can do a return miles over gallons. So that will do the math for me. That will divide miles by gallons and then return that value. Very briefly, just to show how that works. We type in a return 0 right here under the mile per gallon to 100 kilometers, and I will hit run. So we're testing to see if this function works. So we can see we went ahead and we did 3.9 liters for 100 kilometers, right? Liters per 100 kilometers, or 3.9 liters, which meant we traveled 60 miles to the gallon, and that equals the expected output. 7.5 liters per 100 kilometers came out to 31 miles to the gallon. That is the expected output. And then same thing with 23 miles to the gallon and 23 miles to the gallon for exactly 10 liters. All right, so that means we got the first function done. And hopefully this math makes sense. Remember, that was, what, 62.1371, right? I'll just put that in there as a comment so we can see that in the future. Okay, so now the second one, the miles per gallon to the 1100 kilometers. Now, this particularly is the area that I had problems trying to figure out, even though it should be pretty simple, right? We just need to convert the miles into kilometers and then the gallons into liters. Well, gallons into liters is actually the easy part, because we know that 1 liter equals 3.785 gallons. And this was 1 gallon, right? Or however many gallons it needs. But so now we need to just calculate that out. So miles to the gallon, yeah, so it would have been 1 gallon, which means our liters, liters equals 3.785411784. So miles per gallon, that assumes we've gone 1 gallon. That means we assume we have consumed 1 liter. All right, so now we need to figure out how many miles we've actually gone off of that, or more specifically, how many kilometers. Well, how do we figure out how many kilometers we have? Well, we multiply it times, we multiply our miles by that, by 11609,344. So we can go ahead and say kilometers equals miles times, and let's see, 1609.344. More specifically, that's meters, so it actually needs to be 1,000 divided by 1609.344. So that will tell us how many kilometers we've gone. Remember, 1 mile equals that. 1,000 meters, or sorry, 1,000 of those is a kilometer. Yeah. 1,000 meters is a kilometer. There we go. So we have to divide by 1,000. Right. Got to look at my notes there, make sure I'm making sense. Like I said, this was the section that gave me headaches. Let's actually, so if that was how many kilometers I went, I actually need to determine how many 100 kilometers I went, which should mean I should be able to divide that number by 100. So I should be able to do a km 100 variable, or 100 kilometers, which would equal my kilometers divided by 100. Now, in theory, because I have my liters and I have my 100 kilometers, my value should just simply be my liters over my kilometers. So if I return liters divided by km 100, that should hopefully calculate out everything I need. Let's see what the results come out to. So again, the first three results here, 60, 31, 23, that is all my my liters per 100 kilometers. So those we've already confirmed were correct. It's the next three, however, 10, 19, and 25, which I see are not correct. So let me look at my notes here and see exactly what I'm missing. 10, 19, 25, it should have been 3, 7, 10. Let's see. Liters, 3.78. Yep. Kilometers equals miles. Oh, I believe I got these numbers backwards. I believe that should be divided by 1,000. Not that way around. I think I did my math backwards. All else fails, transpose your numbers. And there we go. 3, 7, and 10. That looks a whole lot better. Wow, like I said, the first time I did this, it probably took me about 2 hours to calculate it out. Even though it says up here that this level of difficulty is easy, the code itself is a little easy. Trying to understand actually the math behind it becomes a little more difficult. So again, let's walk through that really quick, since the first one, well, actually we'll walk through the first one here. So we know that a mile is equal to 1609.344 meters. 1,000 of those, so 1,000 divided by 1609 is going to be 1 kilometer. And I know I'm starting off with 100 kilometers, so I need to multiply by 100. And that comes out to about 62.1371. My gallons, I know specifically, are the number of liters used divided by 3.78. Since there's 3.78 liters in 1 gallon, and then I simply divide miles over gallons. By the way, MPG, miles per gallon, that means miles over gallon. Miles divided by gallons. It's amazing how what you see in real life is actually math. See, the second function, miles per gallon, 2 liters of 100 kilometers. So we start off by defining liters as how big the liters actually are. We then define how many kilometers there are in a mile by taking 1609.344, dividing it by 1,000, and then multiplying it by the number of miles driven. That gives me 1 kilometer, and then I divide that again by 1,000 to give me 100 kilometers. I then divide liters over kilometers, so liters per 100 kilometers, or liters over 100 kilometers, and that returns back the full value.